and the significance of the program announced by the Minister of Finance and being carried out by this government. Never before in the history of this nation that a government, that a caring government, that a government of the people, that a government by the people, that a government for the people. The first time in our history that a government has taken up $25 billion. Not 25 million, but $25 billion with a B. And you know, Mr. Speaker, up to 10 o'clock this morning, approximately 390,000+ applicants of Jamaicans, and we are happy for it, and we want more to apply. But Mr. Speaker, you know what is surprising? That a lot of the applicants are from the constituencies represented by my colleagues on that side. Mr. Speaker, and we are happy for it. We are glad for it. We want them to encourage more of their citizens to apply, because this government, this caring government, this government don't look on color. We don't look on color.
Mr. Speaker, point of order. Point of order.
There is a...
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Let me tell you how I know.
Mr. Speaker,
let me tell you how I know.
Point of order.
Let me tell the member,
Mr. Speaker.
Let me tell the member from Southwest.
Mr.
Let
Speaker.
me tell you how I know.
Point of order.
Dr. Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just before you speak, members, when a member is on the floor, when a member is speaking, and you wish to stand on a point of order or seek an explanation, you stand and engage the speaker. We don't want everybody to be sitting. Dr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell. Please, you are a very intelligent person. When a member is speaking and you wish to get a clarification or a withdrawal or a standing order point, you engage the speaker and you will be recognized.
Take off the mask. You
Don't everybody sit there quarreling with the speaker.
I'm going to answer. Thank you very much, Mr.
Minister.
Oh.
Dr. Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Dr. Guy, you're seeking a point of order.
Point of order, sir.
Please state your point of order.
My point of order, Mr. Speaker, is that I'd like the Honourable Minister to indicate to the House if the Ministry of Finance takes this care package application on a constituency-wide basis, and how, no, cut out the geography. And he, if his information is correct, can he tell us the source of his information?
Mr. Speaker, a question has been asked, and I would love to answer the question. But if the member... No, but I want them to hear, I don't want them to repeat and ask it again. Mr. Speaker, the member from Central St. Mary asked a question. The member from Northwest St. Anne is interested. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you the source of my information. The member from Central St. Mary knows that I live in Central St. Mary. And the member from Central St. Mary knows that I know where he has established a call center for people to call in. The member from Northwest St. Anne, the member from Northwest St. Anne well knows that the lady who is going to replace him in this house is a councillor in Western St. Mary. And we know where the call center is in his constituency. We know what they are doing. We know what they're doing. But, Mr. Speaker, we are delighted.
Minister,
we are happy for them. That
Minister
finally, they are caring for their constituents, finally, under a government led by Andrew Holness.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister Montague.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister Montague. Please turn the mic off and listen to me a minute. Minister Montague.
Yes, sir.
You have made a presentation. If anybody on the other side wishes to make a presentation, please indicate so. Do not sit down and disrupt the member when he is speaking. I have recognized
Thank you.
Ms. Hannah, 1 minute. I'd like to know, Mr. Montague, have you finished answering? Well then, Ms. Hannah would like to ask a question.
No, Mr. Speaker, my question has not been answered. The minister said that the vast majority of persons who have applied come from constituencies from members on this side. He has cited 2 cases where, as political representatives, as members of parliament, we have to do our duty and have the responsibilities as members of parliament. And nothing is wrong with what he is saying. But I want him to tell me, right, where that information has come from. And I saw the Minister of Finance push his head through the door a while ago, and I would like for him to be here to indicate that if that level of information is going out, there's no privacy in terms of people who are applying for these grants, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I gave the member the source of my information. And if you want, let me repeat the source of my information. The member from...
I'd like to hear the minister. I would like to hear his answer to Dr. Guy.
Mr. Speaker, the member from Central St. Mary knows as a fact. And he knows that I know. Young lady, please allow me. If you have something to say, indicate to the speaker, and he will allow you to speak. Mr. Speaker, I am happy, I said it before, I'll say it again, that finally, after many years, a lot of them are members of this House, many terms, they were not servicing their constituencies. And as they get a chance under the CARE program, they set up call centers. They set up call centers, registering people, and we are happy for it. I congratulate them for doing that. Because poor people knows no constituency boundary. And if they are doing it on behalf of the poor, we are happy. And I am saying, I will repeat, a lot of them over there are applying for the CARE package, and we are happy that they are doing it. We are pleased.
Dr. Campbell, do you proceed?
Question.
Order, please. Order, please. Let me advise you. There's a statement from the minister.
I have a question, sir.
There's a statement from the minister on which any member can ask any amount of questions. I don't wish for you to turn it into a debate. So if you have a question, get up, ask a question, and sit down and let him answer you. Get up again if you want. But I am not going to entertain a debate on a minister's statement, because that is not the correct way. Now, Dr. Campbell, you have a question for the minister. Please state your question. Turn your mic on and get going.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I do have a question. It's regarding the statement. I don't know why it is that persons are pompous in making a point, and then when you have a follow-up question, they don't want to take it. It is a question. In applying for the different benefits that the care package, the care program allows, it requires individuals to submit their date of birth, TRN, cell number. My question is that information private? Is that information private, or does the political party that is in government has access? Do they have access to that private information of the individuals who are applying for a benefit?
Mr. Speaker, the member from Northwest not listening, and I will forgive him. Let me repeat what I said. Let me repeat what I said. Mr. Speaker, the member from Northwest knows very well that the lady who is to replace him in this house is a councillor from my constituency. And we know that they have set up call centers. And there is nothing wrong with it. I don't have the information that people submit. I don't have it. But we know that they set up call centers. And we know that them ramming down the thing. And we have no problem with it. And I said so. So the question he asked, whether we have access to the information that people submit, the answer is no. But we know them have call centers. And we know, then why are we making a fuss about it? Me make fuss? Me is the member from Northwest. Bring it up. Hello, you were late. You were late. And I don't want you to talk me down. I don't want you to talk me down. Please. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what they're making so much noise over. They should be congratulating this government and the Minister of Finance for spending $25 billion in a stimulus package. That is what they should be doing. That is what they should be doing.
Ms. Hanna. Ms. Hanna.
Minister, can you hear me, sir?
Let's operate intelligently. Ask all your questions. Not everybody speaking one time, sitting down. That is against the standing order. If you wish to speak, indicate so, stand up and make your address to the speaker. Go ahead, Ms. Hanna.
Minister, you can hear me, right? Those taxi operators who would have operated after curfew hours, what systems do you have in place now to ensure that there is a shift system, perhaps? I'm not au fait with the terminology, but I'm representing my constituency, and certainly the taxi operators in Claremont and Monique have said to me that because of the curfew now, they're not able to get work. Those taxi operators who would have worked particular shifts from the school shifts, other persons after those hours are also trying to get the work. Basically what the member from Northwest Manchester was saying. And what I'm asking you is, all things considered and understanding that people are really having a problem, there are always, especially some of the ones from Portmore who would have had to leave to work in Kingston because they have passengers in Kingston. What plans are in place? Could we really stagger it? I know what you're saying about the time allotted, but you would also appreciate that COVID and the implications of it are dynamic and it keeps changing. I don't think anybody would have wanted in the last 48 hours to hear we have over 50 new cases, but that is where we are. So what I'm saying to you is perhaps we can be more dynamic in our understanding as well as we all try to maneuver the situation.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank the member from Southeast Centre. the taxi operators are not an exempt group under the disaster orders. And therefore, I have encouraged them, and in the main, they have complied with the order, and you don't find taxi and bus operators out once the curfew hours have started. And it is something that speaks to the kind of discipline that is now coming to that sector, because a lot of persons have the taxi and bus sector as very indisciplined, and they have cooperated in large part. We understand that it is a difficult period for them, but it is equally a difficult period for all of us. And if they contract the COVID-19, it would be even much more difficult for their families. And what we are saying is that everybody has to pitch in, everybody is affected, and everybody has to take some bit of sacrifice going forward. And the extension of the time has been granted. We had a number of meetings with NCOTA and other associations. The spokesman has made a recommendation, which I have committed to take and have some discussion and see how it can be accommodated, if at all. But I won't rule it out, and I won't accept it, but I'll have to consult, as is my style, to consult rather than to confront. With regards to your people working on shift, unfortunately, I could not support that because it would impact them with the curfew hours. And I would want them to be home and to be safe, because a lot of us are playing around with this virus, and we're all both saying it can't catch somebody else, it's not catching me. We must lock down the country, but allow me. We just have to bite the bullet, understand that as a nation we are confronting something new and something different.
Minister, I was not suggesting putting them on shifts. What I was suggesting is, given the exigencies of their being disciplined and all of them having to work now within the same hours when they never had to do that, understanding the dynamic nature of how this virus is changing our lives, that we still be more compliant in terms, because many of them, what they earn on that day is perhaps what they'll earn for the rest of the week. So all I'm saying is, if you can really just be a little bit more lenient, especially because remember, in my constituency and many of the rural constituencies, a lot of the hills people rely on the taxi operators. That's what I'm saying.
I will understand that, and as I said to the member from Northwest, we'll take the recommendations and we'll give them and then get back to you. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. And let me thank the members of the House.
Through you, Mr. Speaker. Minister. Just in keeping with what the member from Northwest Manchester made a point, I spoke to you last week at a meeting that we had with the taxi associations in Westmoreland and brought this point to you about the extension of the late, going from the 30th to the 14th. But I just want to go back to what we said last week. There's a real problem. Many of these people, the reason they have not paid it is because business has slowed down. From the middle of March and earlier, hotels, airports, in terms of Juta, in terms of all other things, have been slowing down. So they have not had the money to do it. Now you extended it to the 14th, and now you have extended it to the end of May. But if they didn't have the money then, their argument is where they're going to get the money now. So the question is, extending it to the end of June is really probably, something to do. But the truth is, come the end of June, you're going to have to extend it again. And I think that it might as well you just do it once and for all to take that off of their head. and extend it, certainly till after COVID is over, or we are at least opening up the economy a bit, people start to move so that the drivers can once again start earning some funds, would be when we'll do it. And in their minds, many of the drivers, what they're saying now is that there's a difficulty because it's almost as if they're signing up the form to get an incentive of $25,000 to pay it straight back to you in tax, in license fee and late fee. So I suggest, and they have to make a decision whether they're going to be using the money to pay for the license or they're going to use the money to buy liquor food to put on the table. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, that a point you made earlier about setting up call centers, etc. I wouldn't put it like that. Quite frankly, what has happened is that there's a care package, and I'll remind you, this is not the money of the Boldness or a JLP government. This is the government of Jamaica, this economy helping the people of Jamaica. And when you start, Minister, when you start to politicize these things, in a moment when the whole country is looking on and asking us to find their people out there suffering who don't know where the next paycheck coming from, and when you're getting up and talking about all the things, it makes them despair because they don't feel that we're being serious about the response. And I just say to you, what has happened in a lot of these constituencies, mine included, is that many persons, they're going to the care portal. Many persons in the hills and valleys, they don't have the internet, they may not have the computers or the technical expertise to do it. And many of them don't have bank accounts. So when you're saying to them, well, you have to insert this, they're confused. And if we as political representatives do not put in place persons to help them navigate this complex myriad that's put in place, what is going to happen? You will get some that will get the assistance, but I promise you, those that are the most needy will be dropping through the net because they just don't know how to do it. So I would suggest to you, if it is that on this side, a lot of that work has started, then I suggest that you need to start it because this is about the people of Jamaica, Mr.
Mr. McNeil, Mr. Speaker, I said before it's a historic day. Somebody give mic. It's a historic day. Yes, you're going to have to, because in my years here apart from a sectorial presentation, I've never heard you made such a long interruption and contribution. I am very proud of you and happy for you. No, hold on now, please. Mr. McNeil, we member from Western Westmoreland. We had a discussion last week, and I gave you a commitment to look at the recommendations you made. And we have. That's why we are here. And you went on to get into the care package. And you are agreeing with me. I said I am happy that people are doing it so that more and more Jamaicans can make use of it. That's what I said. So why are we jumping up and getting excited? And you have ended at a beautiful point, that you are encouraging everybody to help more and more people to access the funds. And that's the point I was making. And what is wrong with that point? What was the point I was making? No. Mr. McNeil, member from Western Westmoreland, your other recommendation that you are making now in this historic exchange, we will take it on board and give it due consideration, and then I'll get back to you.
Before we proceed further, I'm going to ask members to allow me to use the standing orders to run this House. A minister make a statement, and every member wants to have a debate on the statement, which is totally opposite to what the standing order is saying. I'm going to ask Minister I'm going to ask you to stick by your statement, answer question relevant to the statement, and don't tell me about what happened in Westmoreland or Trelawney. That is not in your statement. Proceeding from here, members who have a question relevant to the minister's statement, please do so now. Do not proceed in a debate. I will have to stop you according to the standing order. All right, I'll not be doing my job. Thank you very much. Mr. Phillips, you have a question?
No, just, Mr. Speaker, just even, Minister, even though just on the transport sector itself, and we're seeing what is happening over in Portmore, lockdown, reduced ridership, and you have asked for social distancing. And I know that there has been, well, we have been praising the doctors and the nurses and things, but those who operate PPV vehicles are also frontline workers because they have to carry home the public and they themselves are exposed. So the JUTC itself is able to protect its drivers and its staff. The other operators, in some instances, you see some of them with face masks and some without. Will the ministry make it mandatory for those who are operating PPV vehicles to, one, be able to at least wear face masks, just as we are asking others to be responsible and wearing it, but also to protect themselves more, those. That's one. But secondly, where the staff of the JUTC is concerned, I'll ask the question if we have any confirmed cases within the team at JUTC, if we do have any in quarantine, and two, what would it take for the Ministry of Health to do regular testing, especially of your drivers of the JUTC?
Mr. Speaker, with regards to the wearing of masks by PPV licensed operators, we are guided by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and we will abide by their guidelines. With regards to whether there is a case at the JUTC, I would have to check and get back to you on that matter. And whether the Ministry of Health and Wellness has the capacity to test, the short answer from my limited knowledge is yes, because I know they rolled out some mobile clinics. Whether they are testing or not, I would have to refer that to the Ministry of Health, because that would be not within my purview. And the last question you asked was about the JUTC and the protection of the staff, etc. The JUTC and Mobay Metro, we have moved to a program of sanitizing the buses and the depots, and we are now placing dispensers in the buses so that the public and the drivers can, and we are investigating a cage for the drivers, not only because we were in advance with the cage because of security reasons, even before COVID, because a number of our drivers were attacked while they are driving, so we're doing a safety cage. And we have a prototype, we're looking at it. It has been fitted in 4 buses already, and we are making some adjustments in consultation with the unions. And we are also moving to have discussions with the PPC, the Procurement Commission, with regards to a cashless system, because it is said that the virus can be spread with money. So we're trying to move to a cashless system. So we had that application before PPC, before this period, because the system that is on the JUTC is old and obsolete. The company that manufactures don't even make parts for the system. So we were far advanced in acquiring a cashless system, and so we have accelerated the procurement process. But with regards to the others, I commit that I'll get back to you with the other answers as soon as I can.
I just want to make it clear, or to get it clear. There has not been any discussion with the Ministry of Health in dealing with the regular testing of your drivers or staff at JUTC as frontline workers. Has there been any discussion at all in getting to that point? And secondly, I mean, the issue, and you are saying to me that you have no knowledge of any of your workers being in quarantine or being confirmed positive at all. Because, I mean, as a minister, I would imagine that if something like that, you'll be one of the first to know. And are you saying that you have no knowledge of such?
Mr. Speaker, what I am saying is that yes, we have had discussion with the Ministry of Health and Wellness with regards to testing, and we will follow the guidelines that they have and the protocols that they have established. And I must pause to say that the Minister and the Ministry of Health and all the technicians and workers have been doing an excellent job in managing the pandemic, and I believe all of us should commend them. I gave you a commitment to check and get back to you. I don't want to give you any rumors or any allegation. I want to give you facts. And I have asked to let me go and check and come back, because I have been hearing a lot of things. And I want to be factual. It's my style.
And that I want you to be, Minister. Because that I want you to be. Because we don't want to create a scare out there that none of us can control.
Ms. Philibert,
Mr. Speaker, I now invite you, or request of you, that you invite one of the darlings of Jamaica and the icon of the entertainment and cultural sector of this country to make a statement to this Honourable House, the member from Central St. Catherine.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if it's necessary to ask to be allowed to speak from a seat other than my own. But today we are observing social distancing, and so I'm speaking from another seat. Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, as a St. Catherine Member of Parliament, I would like to begin by offering words of solace to the people of the parish, particularly the people of Central St. Catherine, who must be very anxious and concerned today. But I say to them, remain calm, follow the protocol, wash your hands with soap and water regularly, and call 888 One Love if you feel like you're having the flu. Those are my advice to you. That's my advice to you. I know the lockdown is difficult, but it is a necessary measure to fight the spread of COVID-19. If we all follow the orders, we will stop further spread of the virus, and soon we'll all be able to get over the restrictions. As difficult as it is, I appeal to you to stay home. I cannot emphasize enough, Tanaya Yard. Mr. Speaker, today I also express gratitude to the people on the front line, our nurses, our doctors, the porters, the drivers, everyone in the health service and the security forces who risk their lives daily to keep the rest of us safe. I speak for all of Jamaica when I say we appreciate all that they continue to do, and we must do all we can to ensure that they are safe and protected while they fight COVID-19 on the front lines. And I think all my colleagues in Parliament today would want to show their appreciation for the frontline workers. This is why, through the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, we were pleased to recently host a 6-hour virtual telethon to raise additional funds to procure urgently needed personal protective equipment for frontline workers. The idea of the telethon, Mr. Speaker, was born out of conversations with our ambassador to the United States, Her Excellency Audrey Marks, our Consul General in New York, Alcyon Roach Wilson, and our Consul General in Miami, Oliver Mayer. They had received several inquiries from members of our diaspora who wanted an avenue to support Jamaica in the COVID-19 fight. They reached out after seeing how the virus had affected first world countries with stronger health systems than Jamaica. The Ministry of Tourism immediately came on board. The Ministry of Health and Wellness endorsed the initiative, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade supported our efforts. As my colleague, Minister Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith will concur, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade teams have shared how inspired they have been by our global diaspora, because in times like this, when we all face the same enemy, it is easy to think every man for himself or every woman for herself. But here was a group of people, Mr. Speaker, who were distressed and experiencing pain and personal loss, but their loyalty and love for the country of their birth moved them to be concerned enough to start thinking of ways in which they could help Jamaica. Such was their display of dedication to our island. So Telethon Jamaica, Together We Stand, was born with the goal of directing the global goodwill and desire to support Jamaica into one major event. The inquiries about how to support Jamaica in this time came from members of the diaspora in various parts of the world: North America, United Kingdom and Europe, Asia, Africa, and it was under the leadership of the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council and the National Association of Jamaican and Supportive Organizations, NAJASO, a global alliance of diaspora leaders and friends of Jamaica was formed, and I was asked to chair the initiative and to produce the show. Mr. Speaker, the team and I reached out to the entertainment community, and the eager response was, how can we help? We all want to help. Again, Mr. Speaker, such dedication to our island home by our entertainers should be applauded. We established the main objectives of Telethon Jamaica. First, it would be a fundraising initiative towards equipping our frontline workers with the appropriate gear to fight COVID-19. Monies raised would go directly to a dedicated fund. Our aim was to raise as much as possible to support the need of $10.5 million US, which is the itemized cost of additional personal protective equipment, testing kits, ventilators, and other equipment needed to strengthen our health system and ensure that our health professionals would be able to respond effectively to a rapid spike as we have seen in other countries. Telethon Jamaica took place on Easter Sunday, and it was a success. A fantastic show of unity, generosity, and the strength of human spirit. Mr. Speaker, I want to express gratitude to the Jamaicans at home and abroad, as well as friends of Jamaica who responded with great enthusiasm to this telethon. Thanks to their kind donations, we are now able to contribute over $50 million. To be exact, $50,261,000 after conversion of multiple currency contributions towards procuring the personal protective equipment for our frontline workers. We say a big thank you to everyone who was able to donate. We appreciate you. Donations are still coming in, Mr. Speaker, and so I know we have exceeded the figure I quoted earlier because we are still counting. But, Mr. Speaker, the telethon had another important objective. Each and every one, each and every community, each and every country, each and every region, the whole of humanity is in this fight against COVID-19. We're all in this thing together. Jamaica doesn't have money, Mr. Speaker, to help other nations to fight COVID-19. Jamaica doesn't have equipment to share with other nations in need. Jamaica doesn't have a brigade of health professionals to send overseas to help. But what Jamaica has is tremendous talent and a music that has been and continues to be the balm in times of trouble. So our reggae music evolved as our response to the challenges of years of trials and tribulations. Throughout its history, reggae has been anthems of resilience, substance and identity, peace and love, not only for us Jamaicans, but also for many, many people across the world. And so the second and equally important objective of Telethon Jamaica, Together We Stand, was to use our reggae music to provide comfort and hope, not only to Jamaica and our diaspora, but to the world. And we were able to achieve that. We have been heartened by the many messages from people around the world. Saudi Arabia, the continent of Africa, the continent of Asia, Latin and South America, from people who are hurting and worried about the coronavirus. They have said that they felt uplifted by the messages and songs of inspiration from the telethon. We're happy that our music brought comfort to people globally during this time. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to rotate the broadcast across the various regions of the world. We hope more and more people will be comforted as we do so, as we believe that Telethon Jamaica has the potential to not only raise funds towards Jamaica's COVID fight, but also start a necessary conversation and present a platform whereby persons can continue to support the cause for as long as this crisis exists. Members of the diaspora have encouraged the continued sharing of these messages and songs of inspiration across the world as they continue to raise funds to provide additional resources for our health service. Mr. Speaker, I'm therefore pleased to advise that the telephone lines and the website will remain up and running so that anyone who was unable to make a donation on Sunday can still participate by watching the concert and making a donation online. They can visit jatogetherwestand.com, or in Jamaica, mypaymaster.com. We welcome their contribution. To donate, they can telephone 1-866-228-8393, toll-free from the United States or Canada, or 440808 189-6147, toll-free from the United Kingdom and Europe. And from Jamaica, 888-729-2455, toll-free. They can also call 876-960-9635. And there's a WhatsApp number, 876-550-1754. Cash and check donations are accepted at any paymaster location in Jamaica or any branch of Citibank to account number 925-0709-218 outside of Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, I close by thanking everyone who helped to make Telethon Jamaica a reality. Our team accomplished in 10 days, Mr. Speaker, what would normally get done over the course of a year in terms of planning and execution. I thank them for working around the clock, even in the midst of the national curfew, to support this effort to equip our frontline workers. The performance lineup for the Telethon was simply fantastic. Some of the biggest names in entertainment and sports participated in and/or endorsed Telethon Jamaica. So, Speaker, I thank them all. I thank their management teams for being part of this important initiative. We can always count on our entertainers and the creative community. The lineup was star-studded. And in addition to our Jamaican artists, they were able to get their friends who are non-Jamaicans involved to endorse or perform. To the donors, we appreciate every single donation, Mr. Speaker. We're happy to name those who pledged $4 million or $2 million or $500,000. But we are as equally grateful to those who pledged $20 or $100, even the widow's mite. Mr. Speaker, I know, based on discussions that are ongoing, that we will be able to announce more contributions and some very substantial ones going forward. But at this time, what is left for me to say is thank you to the many members on both sides of this honorable House who supported this cause. And I'm sure they will all now join me in thanking all who came together with hands, hearts, and pockets to make the Together We Stand COVID-19 Telethon a reality. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and again, thanks to our frontline workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I too want to join in congratulating all those who were able to conceptualize this event. It is one that is worthy to be praised. Mr. Speaker, I too would want to join in thanking all those who participated and to just say to the minister that their effort should not go in vain. We need to ensure that we set up a committee, and that committee will be able to oversee on a non-partisan basis to ensure that what it was intended for will be realized. I know the spirit of our Jamaican people. We love Jamaica. Don't care where we are in the world, we believe in our country. And for that, I am very, very proud to stand here to congratulate each and everyone and to say that we are grateful as a nation. God bless you.
I think that was the nicest thing we have heard for a long time. Thank you very much, my friend from Eastern St. Catherine. It was not a nice and pleasant departure from the usual harassment. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I noticed at least one member present here today that I know has come here to respond to the Minister of Health. And now I'm inviting you to request of the Minister that he makes his statement at this time.
Dr. Tufton.
Mr. Speaker, permission to speak from a seat other than my own. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, can we get copies?
Mr. Speaker.
I gave copies to the clerk.
No, I need to get a copy. No, when?
Yeah, well.
Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead, Dr. Tufton.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to update the Honourable House and the people of Jamaica on the coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-2019, which was declared a global pandemic by the World Health Organization, WHO. Mr. Speaker, as of Wednesday, April 15, the National Surveillance Unit has advised that there are 125 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Jamaica. The 20 additional confirmed cases include 5 males and 15 females, with ages ranging from 2 years to 43 years. Two of the cases are imported, the 2-year-old male from St. James, and the other a 43-year-old female from St. Catherine. The other 18 individuals, Mr. Speaker, are from St. Catherine and arise from an ongoing investigation of a BPO activity in that parish, Olorica. Mr. Speaker, this brings, in regards to this BPO facility, to 52 the number of confirmed cases working at this Olorica facility. Their ages range from 18 to 34 years. They include 41 females and 11 males. There are 47 individuals from St. Catherine, 3 from Kingston and St. Andrew, 1 from Clarendon, and 1 from Portland. There are now, Mr. Speaker, 33 imported cases of COVID-19. 34 cases are contacts of a confirmed case, and 6 are local transmission cases not epidemiologically linked, and 52 cases are under the Olorica investigation, the BPO facility. Some 51 or 41 of the confirmed cases are male, and the rest, 74 or 59%, are female, while the ages of all confirmed cases range from 2 years to 87 years old. Mr. Speaker, the St. Catherine Health Department is actively following the situation at Alarica since Friday, April 10th. So far, over 300 staff members have been interviewed, and it's ongoing, so it's a moving target, of the approximately 800 or so persons. Just over 700 employees, but it also includes some initial close contacts of persons who have tested positive. So the team in the field, numbering just over 250, who are community health aid, public health inspectors, and public health nurses, are continuing the efforts at contact tracing, but also testing. Today, they had a target of collecting just about 150 samples. So the numbers are changing. I'm giving you the numbers as I got them in preparation for the presentation here this afternoon. Contact tracing has begun, as said earlier, in earnest in all affected parishes. Over 300 samples have been taken for employees and their relatives. Confirmed cases are being placed in isolation facilities, and the sampling is expected to continue over the next few days, next 5 days, where we expect all employees of the facility to be sampled and tested. Mr. Speaker, in terms of testing, a total of 1,391 samples have been tested so far, resulting in 1,258 negative tests and 125 positive, with 8 results pending. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the testing protocol, I know a number of questions have been asked about this. Just let me remind the House that in keeping with the testing protocol, specimens must be collected from and will be tested for COVID-19 for the following persons. This is the existing protocol, but let me just say that it is under review constantly as the phase of the virus expansion or spread continues. We adjust the protocol as we go along to co-opt more groups. All suspected cases, as per the case definition, are tested. All symptomatic contacts of confirmed COVID-19 cases, whether they display symptoms or not. All asymptomatic close contacts of confirmed COVID-19 cases, which is linked to the previous statement I made. All SARI cases for all hospitals. All admitted lower respiratory tract infection or pneumonia from all hospitals. All influenza-like illness cases. All healthcare workers who have been assessed to be at risk from exposure to COVID-19 cases, all symptomatic healthcare workers, irrespective of contact history, are tested. And this group essentially forms the core in terms of the targeted groups that are tested as a routine in order to determine the extent of the spread of the virus, to detect, to contain, and of course to treat. By Friday of this week, Mr. Speaker, we will add a second facility to do COVID-19 testing. This is at the National Public Health Lab, and this facility is now being installed. We expect that this will be able to do an additional 350 samples per 8-hour shift. So essentially, we will be in a position to more than double our testing capacity in terms of samples per day. And depending on whether we operate 1 or 2 shifts, we will adjust as the need arises. In terms of the mobile testing, we have retrofitted 5 mobile units, Mr. Speaker. Up to yesterday, 4 were deployed to the respective regions. And this is in aid of expanding the sampling collection and testing for COVID-19. As part of those expanded testing efforts, we will begin this Friday, April 17, 2020, to expand the mobile testing in 2 health regions, the Southeast Regional Authority and in the Northeast Regional Health Authority. The one unit was actually based in Clarendon, and I actually visited the quarantine community where they were collecting samples a few days ago. That was the first one to be deployed. Subsequent to that, additional units have been deployed. The mobile units, Mr. Speaker, will enhance the sampling or collection of sampling. There is a protocol that guides whose sample will be collected. So we have trained the medtechs to up to 55 have volunteered to support or work with the mobile units. 2 days ago, 35 were trained, and they are to train the remaining numbers, and they will go out, they will provide the discussions or the counseling, if you will, for persons who are so interested. The samples will be collected, taken back into Kingston, and tested either at the National Influenza Lab or the National Public Health Lab. In terms of personal protective equipment, Mr. Speaker, with the threat of the COVID-19, the Ministry of Health has moved fairly swiftly with all the challenges of securing personal protective equipment globally because of the demand by all countries of the world. We have moved to ensure that we have adequate equipment, personal protective equipment, and to date, orders valuing over $1 billion Jamaican dollars have been made. Major items delivered to date include an additional 35 ventilators, 6 ICU beds, 50 physiological monitors, over 2.2 million PPE items, so that includes the N95 masks, the protective equipment. I have had discussions, Mr. Speaker, with the regions through Zoom arrangements or Zoom meetings, and I would say on average, in terms of the supplies in the region, most of the regional management have indicated that they have 2 to 3 weeks supplies on average. And the NHF, I have asked to manage the procurement arrangement, so they are the ones actually doing the contacts with the suppliers. It's very difficult. We have lost some items, frankly speaking, because we have had situations where, having discovered that the items were available in other jurisdictions, we have not been able to access those items. And then also, Mr. Speaker, we have had situations where we have accessed the items, offered to pay to source, but there is no logistics arrangement. In other words, the logistics mode of moving the items from where they are to us have been very difficult. So it has been a very challenging situation, but I want to just thank the NHF and Mr. Anderson in particular and his team, because they have been able to leverage some of the existing arrangements that they have, relationships, to access some of the personal protective equipment. We have a few that we have to prioritize to add to access, but I think generally speaking, we have enough to take us through the system over the next few weeks while we await others to arrive. In terms of isolation and quarantine facilities, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry has established 3 types of spaces in regions, namely space for quarantining. This is for persons who are not positive, but we think are sufficiently connected and at risk to be placed in quarantine. And we have established facilities across the country, managed by the respective regions. Isolation in hospitals is the second, which is, of course, persons who are being treated and are therefore requiring medical attention, both from the clinicians but also from the equipment that supports that kind of treatment. And the third is the transition care facilities for recovering patients who are awaiting discharge. The protocol is to achieve 2 negative tests within a 48-hour period in order to discharge a patient. or to deem a patient sufficiently cured or healed to be discharged. More often than not, well, all the time, these patients are not showing any symptoms, they have no difficulties, but they are positive. So what we do, we put them in a sort of convalescent type setting, and we have had to lease facilities to keep them in that halfway house, if you will, to transition them as they await the 2 negative tests to be fully discharged. And we have a number of those facilities across the country, which are different from the quarantine facilities and, of course, different from the isolation facilities. There are 2 national quarantine facilities in the Southeast Regional Health Authority, one in Western Region, but negotiations are taking place to add additional capacity. In terms of isolation facilities, Mr. Speaker, there are 22 hospitals with wards for COVID-19 patients, numbering approximately 232 COVID-19 beds ready for use, and up to this morning, there were 57 beds occupied, which means an additional 175 beds available. Essentially what we did, Mr. Speaker, is to ask the management of the regions and by extension the hospitals to literally create a COVID ward. Now that required transferring patients, discharging patients, moving around patients, but literally creating a facility in each hospital with the appropriate amenities to be used exclusively for COVID patients. And what I'm reporting here today are the number of beds that are now available. It's still an ongoing process. There are a number of hospitals that are expanding and further developing. I think members understand and should appreciate the limitations of our hospital infrastructure. So it's not an easy task, and it does mean some inconvenience for existing operations, but nevertheless, a necessary decision because of the challenges that we're having and we foresee. A further 41 beds, Mr. Speaker, are to be ready in Southern Region within 3 weeks, 10 to be available in Northeast Region as needed, and a further 3 to be ready in the Western Region. This means, Mr. Speaker, that a total of 54 additional isolation beds in fairly short order, 286 within the next 3 weeks. In addition, the numbers of high dependency beds and ICU beds will continue to increase over time. This is where, of course, we have the very severe cases. Currently, 66 patients remain in isolation and 21 persons are in quarantine at government facilities. Mr. Speaker, we are pleased to report at this time that persons in isolation remain stable, and there are no critically ill patients at this time. Of course, that can change, but happily, that's not the case now. There are 15 patients in our transition care facilities who remain stable as well and are awaiting discharge testing, which we do on a daily basis. We have discharged a number of patients already, Mr. Speaker. I think it's somewhere in the region of 19, about 19 or 20 patients who have gone through the process, treated, successfully had their 2 negative tests, and therefore released to their families. And we want to thank the public health workers again, Mr. Speaker, for the efforts that they continue to make at great cost. I mean, I'm now experiencing 24-hour shifts, meaning someone working from 5 to 5. It's amazing, and it shows that Jamaica is in fact resilient, and they are committed to the cause of service to their fellow men. Mr. Speaker, the persons in quarantine remain asymptomatic. The health department across the island are currently tracing approximately 432 close contacts of the confirmed cases. And, okay, here's the information about those recovered and released. 21 patients have actually have recovered and released. And we have had, of course, unfortunately, 5 deaths, the latest being yesterday, which is unfortunate, of course, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the contact tracing, over 432 close contacts of the confirmed cases are taking place. But again, I say, members, don't hold me to the numbers, because this is such a fluid situation. It changes every day. For right now, when we announced, as I did an hour or two ago, the additional 20 cases, 18 of which from the call center, it immediately changed the dynamics, because every one of those positive cases meant that you have to visit their home, you have to determine the people they live with, and they become automatic quarantine individuals. Now, we have contacted all 800, them and their families, and asked them to home quarantine. And to the extent that they show symptoms, we have taken them into institutions. To the extent that they test positive, we have removed them to hospitals. But again, it's extremely fluid. And so it's hard to have hard and fast numbers in this kind of very rapidly changing scenario. In closing, Mr. Speaker, to allow my colleagues to raise issues or questions, let me again appeal to members of the public to remain calm. It's important. It's difficult not to. The world is in a state of panic, and all of us as Jamaicans can access sufficient information to see actions of panic taking place globally, and of course, to some extent, locally. It is not the right response to dealing with a crisis of this kind. And so we would like to urge our members of the public, all of us, to remain calm, however, to be concerned sufficiently to take the advice that is being given by the public health team. They know what they're doing. And indeed, I venture to say that our team, who are managing the process, who are on the front line, are managing in a manner that I am proud of as Minister of Health and as a Jamaican. Our contact tracing has accounted for a lot of the containment, because they go out, they interview, they temperature check, they record, they log, they assess, and they conclude based on information. And the history of our primary healthcare system, Mr. Speaker, has really distinguished our efforts in this COVID-19 threat from other countries that do not have as rigid and resilient a primary healthcare infrastructure at the community level. And I want to just say publicly, on your behalf, thanks to them for that. So I urge the public to listen to the precautions, listen to the advice given that is out there. We have a very active public education campaign on mainstream media, social media, in the communities through the town criers that I know is taking place, and of course through us as political representatives who I know are in touch with our constituents. It's important that we manage that information flow, and I urge the public to continue to support. We will continue to do what is necessary, Mr. Speaker, to give the guidance that is required. I am prepared to say, given the nature of this crisis that we face, we won't always get it right, but we are committed to correcting it if it's not right, and ensuring that we work together to solve this challenge, which is threatening our life as we know it, as a country and as a community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister. I want to start off first by starting where you stopped off, by thanking all the healthcare workers who are out there on the front line. Thanking all the support staff, including the police and all the allied staff who go out to help in this fight, this whole country approach to fighting. And certainly, Minister, you know that from this side, that whereas we have differences sometimes in how it is done, we are committed to assisting the government of Jamaica, supporting the measures that we feel will redound to the benefit and the health of the people of Jamaica. So I want to, again, to commend the efforts of the workers who are out there. The recent numbers over the past 2 days has basically opened the underbelly of this disease. The fact that we have had 52 over the past 2 days, and 5 over the past 2 days and more counting. The reality is that, and just state this for what it is, Minister, hindsight is a good 20/20, you know. But we have always from day one disagreed in terms of the testing protocols. We have said it in this very house, we have said it as well in the select committee that we have in terms of who is tested, the number of tests that are done. You know, Minister, what is mind-boggling? I don't want to sound like the former colleague of ours in this house, Member Daly, who said mind-boggling, but probably he's correct. That from March 10th, when we diagnosed our first case, we have just done over 1,300 tests. Yet, Minister, the facilities at the National Influenza Laboratories were upgraded to do 1,260 tests per week, and that was like 2 weeks ago. Where we have differed as well is that it relates to not only the amount of tests, but who do you test? Who do you test? We see on page 2 of your statement, page 3, that you have expanded the numbers of persons who are being tested. And we do agree that the protocol changes almost every day. We would have preferred, however, that the protocol would have changed faster, earlier than now, when we see that the need is there to do all this testing. We spoke as well, and we disagreed with the advice given to you by your technocrats that you would only test those who are showing symptoms. And we suggested and implored the ministry to start looking elsewhere, because we have been au fait, and just as the ministry, is that the new scientific evidence, not only this week, but last week and the week before, was suggesting that and clearly indicating that there was spread by asymptomatic persons, irrespective of the fact that the numbers may be lower than those that are spread by symptomatic persons. But yet, we remained bound to a particular decision that we are not going to test those who were asymptomatic. And it's really unfortunate, but we are where we are now, and I've seen that you have included within the new protocol all asymptomatic persons of close contact of confirmed COVID cases. But we need to go to further, Minister. I would think that as part of what we are doing, we should also be testing all our frontline workers on a more frequent basis. I have made that recommendation at our select committee, and only this morning evidence is coming out of CDC in the States that 10 to 20% of the total number of COVID positive cases are among healthcare workers. So it is even more persuasive argument why we should be testing our frontline workers, and testing them not necessarily because they work in the COVID care section of the hospitals or the health facilities, but all frontline workers. You indicated that by Friday, the machinery, the new machine at the National Public Health Laboratory will be up, which will be giving us about 360 tests per 8-hour shift. But is it that the machine will be completely installed by Friday, or is it that it will be up and running by Friday? Is one of the questions that I would like for you to answer as well. Now, the matter, Minister, with the PPEs you mentioned in your statement and the sum spent on providing personal protective equipment. And though we have been advised, though we have been told by the heads of the Nurses Association of Jamaica and the Medical Doctors Association of Jamaica, and as you have indicated, the heads of the regional health authorities, that there is sufficient PPEs in there. We still have some concerns about the fact that there are still complaints coming from some of our frontline workers that there is inadequate PPEs. We may very well have them in storage. We may very well have them at the warehouse of the National Health Fund. And we have spoken to that before, Minister, you and I, and even in committee meetings, about ensuring that the supply chain works and that these people get them on a timely basis so that they don't run out and are there fretting, worrying that if tomorrow we don't get any, then we might not be able to see any of these patients. The other matters, Minister, refer to a complaint too coming from those who do the undertaking. And I got a call this morning from a funeral home director who has concerns, even though nationally it has been said that the funeral directors have been given the protocols. But his concern is that many of his members do not understand, one, have not been given one, do not understand, two, what has been done. And he cited a case that when Ebola was coming, we were all gathered together and explained X, Y, and Z. And he's wanting a similar thing to happen now, irrespective of the fact, Minister. Please allow me. Please allow me. The gentleman is a member of the not fringe group. No, he's not a member of the fringe group. Minister, Mr. Speaker, can you ask the undertaker over there who belongs to the fringe group to allow me to continue? Yes. So, Minister, even though you have said, and the CMO has said that the medical officers of health have given that information, I'm asking that that be also explained to those operators as well. And I want you to know that the person who called me belongs to the association and is not a fringe operator or somebody outside the system. Mr. Speaker, I have been asked also to ask you today in the question and answers by a colleague from the member from Central Westmoreland, that since the George's Plain case has been found, unfortunately the man has died. The reality is that despite repeated promises from the health authorities, up to last night, no one, based on information that has come from the community, no one from public health has come into the community to do any contact tracing, to have a discussion with the relatives, or anything like that. Now, this seems, if it is true, quite cavalier in terms of the approach by the health authorities. And Minister, it is not a time. You mentioned about commending them earlier on, and I do want to commend them too. But I want for us to all understand that it takes a little more than what seemed to be happening in some cases. Minister, the matter of the Portland, which is the other hotbed, and I'm happy that you have indicated that one of the mobile units will be sent to the Northeast Regional Health Authority, because based on comments from the Chief Public Health Inspector for the parish, the over 1,000 persons that they are seeking is cause for concern within the parish, and there is inadequate testing capabilities there. We want to ensure that you can ramp that up. I would like to know, Minister, too, what is the level of testing that you have left at the National Influenza Laboratory? We were told a couple of weeks ago that you got 3,000 tests. We would like to know if those numbers have been beefed up, or are you waiting on the operation of this other equipment that you have to be installed at the National Public Health Laboratory? And Minister, can I get some protection from the member from Northeast St. Andrew? Minister. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the protection. Minister, unfortunately, so far we have had 5 deaths of the numbers of our COVID-positive patients. But what we are not basically seeing or are being reported, possibly because of the lack of testing, is that those persons who may have died from other chronic communicable diseases, but who have not been tested at all to see whether COVID is related to that. No. There's a reason for that. Please listen. Stick to law and I'll stick to medicine. In New York, we have found that the numbers, reports coming out of that region, and you're ready to, that they have seen a almost 3-fold increase in the numbers of persons who are dying from cardiac arrest or heart attacks compared to the same period last year. And a lot of it is presumed to be due to COVID. There are, but you cannot dispute the facts, that there are statistically an increase, and whether that is so. And I'm saying all of this against the background that a couple of weeks ago, the leader of the opposition indicated that he had written to the Most Honorable Prime Minister indicating that the Cuban authorities were prepared to give us the interferon alpha 2 alpha B to treat as part of the armamentarium to treat COVID-positive cases. Have we entered upon the reference in trying to get that particular drug here to utilize in the treatment? You had indicated that just like when hydroxychloroquine was being mooted, that the Ministry of Health and your CMO said that Jamaica is attempting to be part of that international study. Now, there is sufficient evidence there, and it's something you could have your technocrats to look on to see whether that could be utilized in the treatment as well. I'm saying that against the background. Of use internationally, to the fact that we have had 5 persons who have died so far, and whether the use of this in these cases might have prevented deaths. Might have. Medicine is not an exacting science, my dear, right? None has been approved by anyone, but we have tried to utilize some. Minister, those are my questions for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The member, I want to thank the member for his questions. Permission to speak from a seat other than my own. I have to request that all the time, okay? Permission, Mr. Speaker. That's what I thought. I got permission before.
Permission granted.
Saying I need to ask all the time. I didn't know that. Yeah, no. Mr. Speaker, let me thank the member for his comments and his questions, and to say that I think that the participation of the opposition in the Special Select Committee, which has met or has been meeting weekly since his appointment, is working well, and a number of the issues that have been raised by the member would have been raised at the committee level, and we have given a long discussion on it. But nevertheless, I look forward to convening that meeting again tomorrow, I think. And one of the things I'll do tomorrow, I've asked to be done for the agenda, is a discussion around testing. Because the reality is, Mr. Speaker, and he's correct, this is a novel virus, and everything about it is a learning experience. And there are certain characteristics or features of this virus and the attempt to deal with it globally that may dominate the media space, but not necessarily is recommended as good clinical practice. And one of the things that we try to do one of the things that we try to do, Mr. Speaker, we try to be guided. The team that I take advice from, and I inquire around issues that I try to appreciate and understand, are guided on some fundamental principles that are influenced by the science of the response, which is a learning curve. So it comes out of PAHO, it comes out of WHO. I was in a Zoom meeting this morning with PAHO, looking at the experiences of other countries and so on. So testing and the approach to testing is still a hotly debated issue. And I want to start by saying that when you assess the response, it is important that you do not place your strategy on a singular approach. Testing in and of itself is not going to solve the COVID threat. It is important, but it's not the only feature, and we have to be careful that we don't rely solely. Let me finish. One of the reasons why I
Members.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I say to the member, we outline exactly how we approach testing, the protocol around testing. And I did say also that it is a moving target in that we adjust as we go along and as the need requires. So we outlined several protocols that guides who is tested. And it includes, member, testing asymptomatic persons. You gave an impression earlier that we were not. I'm saying we do test in asymptomatic persons. Secondly, it includes testing healthcare workers and workers on the front line. Any healthcare worker and worker on the front line dealing in any way, shape, or form with the COVID response are tested. In terms of the call center scenario, which is unfortunate that we have this number currently, the reality is that it is out of testing and confirmation of a positive case that led us to the call center. The call center was in fact assessed by the health team prior to all of this happening, as all call centers were, in Montego Bay, in St. Catherine, and other areas, where the health team went, did an inspection, made some recommendations, but the individual who was tested positive based on symptomatic conditions, and then from that positive test, it led us to the call center, which led to the testing of other individuals and the current scenario that we're in. I would say, however, that the situation at the call center could not have been prevented by testing, to be totally frank. The call center and the management of the call center breached the protocol that was instituted by the government when the call centers were allowed to operate under the current condition. And I think the Honorable Prime Minister spoke to that at length, and also that the matter is going to be investigated and appropriate action taken. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't think testing would have solved that problem, but testing is helping to address the issue now that the issue has been brought to the fore. In terms of the machine as it relates to the public health lab, the machine is going to begin to do testing, I am told, this Friday. So this week, it will be ready and available for doing tests. The issues around funeral homes, there was a protocol that was established and circulated. So you raised the issue about a particular individual or funeral home complaining. We can easily solve it if you just pass the information to me. But just to be very clear, a protocol was in fact done, and that protocol was circulated through the respective associations. And there are more than one associations, by the way, so maybe you're talking to a member who is not as briefed on what has happened to date. In terms of the question around the Westmoreland and the person who was positive and subsequently died, it would be highly unusual, and I will check, that no contact tracing or follow-up would have been done, because that would fly in the face of the general approach that all of us on both sides have recognized the primary healthcare workers who are out there in the field and who don't make those mistakes. So I hear you, and I'm prepared to follow up on it, but I think that would be rather unusual given what they have been doing to date in terms of the contact tracing. The issue around the Cuban drugs, we have discussed, Mr. Speaker, the Cuban drug issue, except that the approach I'm being told that the assessment and the technical discussions that have taken place around the drug, given that it is not approved globally, has been not to utilize the drug at this point in time. This is from the Chief Medical Officer. Again, I can only go by the advice that is given to me, and that's the advice that I've gotten. So it's not that we have not looked at it. As you know, we are collaborating with the Cuban government in several ways, and we are very appreciative in terms of the clinical capacity that have been added to our front line against COVID. But as far as the drug is concerned, a decision to date has been taken not to engage for usage at this point in time. An official position. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Minister. I want to ask some questions as it relates to your call center case in Portmore. You said that there are over 300 tests that have been done from this grouping. Interviews. And I want to know, of the staff complement of 787, how many have been tested? That's one. Two, of the 52 positive cases that you have found, of the 258 who have been tested, how many of those 52 are symptomatic and how many are asymptomatic? Because that's important for us to understand also. And Minister, you said something earlier on which I think is regrettable that you said it. That is your position as it relates to testing. It is an unfortunate comment because we know, everyone knows, that unless you have data, it will not be able to drive where you intervene. There's a colleague of mine, he's right here. He speaks about evidence-based and data-driven and evidence-based. If you don't have that, and the only way you can have that evidence is to test, then you cannot make the informed intervention in the areas in which you need to do that. So it's not a matter of one against the other. They are complementary, but testing has to be, right? Whereas it has to be central in all of what we do. And interestingly, you know, the more you test, the more you find cases. We know that. Everyone knows that. Every country that has been testing more have been finding the numbers driving up. So there's no reason why we should be afraid of testing and find that this is our number. We can't be bound to a curve that we would like to see, as you said, out of Singapore, that we're following this particular curve. If it means that we need to test more to find out more as to how many people in this country are infected, then we ought to do that. I'm glad that you have found the ability to get this new machinery, but still, after 2 weeks, when we can test 1,260 per week, we have only tested 1,360 from the 10th of March to yesterday's date. We're not doing enough testing. And I find it a little challenging, really, Minister, to accept that part of the basis for not getting more testing is that, one, our healthcare workers are our healthcare workers are afraid to do some of the testing. That has been said at the committee, Horace. You weren't there, right? Two, that is one of the reasons. And two, that there are people who don't want to do the test. So if that is the case of people who don't want to do the test, why do you want to have this mobile healthcare unit going out there and offering tests to people who would fit a certain criteria, right? It doesn't follow. It don't maths out. So the truth is, Minister, my basic point is that we need to do more testing, and the testing will be able to drive where we do the intervention in terms of the contact tracing, in terms of those who need to be isolated, quarantined, or whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member. In terms of the first question around the numbers, you've said it in the second question that up to last evening there were 250 plus tests that were administered, or samples collected. Samples, because they have to go to the lab and then the test done. There is another 150, I'm told, to be collected today, and they intend to complete testing the entire staff complement over the next few days, plus the close contacts, so those that they live with at home and so on. So there'll be a lot more tests done. Ultimately, we intend to complete the entire process. We are also intending, and I've asked them to, well, we've agreed, that the other location of that facility, which is located in Halfway Tree, would also be visited, inspected, and I think some tests may have to be done there also, because there may have been some commingling of the workforce between the two locations. As it relates to symptomatic versus asymptomatic, I really would need to get that information. The initial positives were turned up because they had symptoms, and as a consequence were tested, and then from there, the first two, exactly. There are some that are symptomatic, I'm told, and those have been placed, well, all who are positive have been placed in appropriate isolation facilities, but I can't tell you exactly how many, but for certain there are some. In terms of the testing issue, Mr. Speaker, I didn't intend, and the member argues in extremes, and I want to caution him not to. Certainly when he tries to paraphrase me on what my intentions are, because I'm not arguing in extremes at all. I am not in any way suggesting that tests are not extremely important to this process. I keep saying publicly, and I've said it before at all levels in the committee meeting, that we argue a lot about tests, which is very important, and we are going to ramp up testing, and we're looking now at an antibody test, which, as you know, being the clinical mind that you are, is a rapid test that looks at whether or not you're exposed to the virus, as opposed to separating and identifying the virus, which is what we do now. So we're going to be coming with that, and that is going to be a much more mass testing operation. But, Mr. Speaker, one has to recognize too, and I appreciate the point about testing driven by science and understanding the data to make decisions. But there are margins of error that accounts for any scientific approach. And some of these margins of error are tolerable. Others can throw you into a whirlwind by making or influencing poor decisions. I have been approached by no less than 20 individuals or firms asking or selling rapid test kits. No, let me finish. Mr. Speaker, if I may. I've been approached by quite a number of persons seeking to commercialize the global emergency, the national emergency, offering test kits. And I must say that even within the panic and the concern, it is important that we provide the leadership that is not fazed by the emergency, but calculates and studies an approach that is in the best interest of the country. to unleash rapid test kits on a country that is 60% accurate, where you end up getting significant false positives and false negatives, would be a bad idea, and it would not serve the interests of public health. So one of the things that we have done, remember, we started off as it relates to testing, not just by looking at the number of tests, but looking at the methodology of testing, which does not occupy the conversation at all. Everybody talks about test, and it seems not to matter what type of test, the accuracy of the test, or the approach to testing. Let me finish, Mr. Speaker, thank you. The methodology of testing is where we believe a lot of the accuracy of the approach to get what is actually the state of play in the country takes place. We have identified the vulnerable groups, meaning the high-risk groups, whether it is frontline workers, persons with a travel history, persons linked to a positive case, persons who turn up in hospitals with upper respiratory ailment, who have no relationship with travel history or positive, they are automatically tested. And then, of course, we open the lines, if you will, to persons who desire to be tested, and we do a particular screening and then give them the opportunity to be tested based on the discussion between the clinician and those persons. Mr. Speaker, I believe that to date, and I'm not saying it's not subject to change, which is why I say everything is subject to change depending on where we are with this virus. We have tested in a way reflected not just in the numbers, but in the approach to testing, where we have a fairly accurate depiction as to what the state of play in the country is as it relates to the virus. And we are going to have to adjust that, which is why I say the antibody tests are coming, which is why we are putting in additional capacity, which is why we have the mobile clinics going out, because I must say the call center scenario represents for us our greatest challenge as it relates to the spread of the virus, because theoretically you probably have 1,000 persons between employees and their relatives who are out in the country somewhere, which is why the shutdown of St. Catherine was important, who are carrying the virus and spreading the virus. And that becomes very difficult. So we have to now engage in a different phase. But up to the point where we focused on containment and the high-risk and vulnerable group, frankly speaking, the testing and the methodology of testing has served us well. Mr. Speaker, if you look at we manage and track the sickness profile of our hospitals. There's no unusual increase in numbers in the hospitals of persons who are suffering from any symptoms related to COVID. And to the extent that they turn up, they're tested. And overwhelmingly, as a control group, persons who are identified outside of the Centennial sites, coming up with upper respiratory ailment or lower respiratory ailment, and they are tested, it's negative, unless they are linked to a travel history or to some other vulnerable groups. So we feel that it has worked. However, I am prepared to accept and agree with the member that the expansion of that process is required now because of the next phase of the virus, which we have always predicted, the community spread phase. Always predicted that that would come, because that's the cycle of the virus in every country throughout the world. And so that's the phase that we're going in, which is why the antibody testing is going to take place. So I'll give you an example on the antibody testing to look at the extent to which the virus is in the population, and it is present in people, in individuals, in citizens. Take Bull Bay, 7 and 8 miles. Now, we had to quarantine that facility. We had 8 or 9 persons coming out of that facility that were positive. It is a community that should benefit from an antibody test, where all 12,000 citizens, to the extent that we can get them to do a rapid test, to see to what extent the virus has achieved, or the citizens have achieved some level of herd immunity within that population given that that population was quarantined. So there's a method that is being developed, and we'll speak more about that, member, at the Special Select Committee, just to reassure you and the concerned citizens around testing that it is not our intention to minimize the importance of testing. It's just that we have managed the process to this point and focused heavily on the vulnerable groups and the methodology of testing, guided by the authorities and the research, rather than engage in a panic response, as some countries have done, purchasing 5 tests per citizens. Now, that's their prerogative, but frankly speaking, that's not how you manage a crisis. It has to be a lot more studied and engaged in a lot more methodology, and that's what we have done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question of the numbers of tests, Minister, in terms of order, the viral lab. New orders, are there any?
Right, so I've been told, but we had a meeting up to late last evening with a number of, we had a meeting to discuss the issue of testing. And I was told that by this weekend, we should have somewhere in the region of 20,000 equivalent test kits, if you will, or materials for testing. We had some delays, I'll admit, because we had some supplies coming out of a particular country, and those supplies were blocked for the particular country, and by the country. The U.S., of course. You've heard the laws. You've heard the laws by the position thing. So we no, I'm not afraid, but I'm just saying. They have acted in their interest. We have to act in our interest. So in the meantime, in the meantime, Mr. Speaker, we have had to recalibrate our strategy in order to get from other sources, and that led to some delays. But we're getting ahead, and by the weekend into early next week, we do have enough now, but we will be bolstering the supplies over the next few days.
Dr. Campbell was before. Very much. Minister, I have a few questions from some gaps that I'm seeing in the information presented here. The first thing, are you testing all of the patients that you have in quarantine? Testing all the patients that you have in quarantine? The persons that you have in quarantine? No, just a yes or no? Just a yes or no? No. See, my lady, relax. He said no. He said no. All right. All right. So follow my reasoning now. Mr. Minister, follow my reasoning now. The persons that you have in quarantine are the persons who came in contact with somebody who is positive. And that's why you quarantine them. So why would you quarantine them then? You have them either coming in contact with or they're coming from a country where it is thing there. But the persons who you have in state quarantine are the persons who have been in contact with somebody.
Mr. Speaker, I regret responding to a question from my seat because he has effectively paraphrased me and made it a point of record, and I want to correct it. Now, you would have to clarify, member, whether you're referring to home quarantine or institutional quarantine. Home quarantine, no. We have recommended all persons with a travel history to stay at home, and institutional quarantine, yes. Okay, so that's important for the record. Thank you.
So, when you refer to these persons from the call center, the 800, is it? Quarantine orders have been served on over 800 persons. all 800 will be tested? This is what I'm asking, because unless this is new today, before we weren't testing all of these persons. We were testing the ones that showed symptoms. Now, in the statement, it made reference to a transitional house, which is somebody who does not have symptoms but cannot be sent home until they have 2 negative tests. What is the difference between that individual